I'm Jake Lizzio, and in this lesson we're going to be exploring the theory, technique, and application of ADD11 arpeggios. By the time you're done with this lesson, you're going to have some really fun speed-building exercises that will also improve your knowledge of music theory, and you'll be able to take that stuff and actually start writing music with it. Everything in this lesson I've designed so you don't need any prerequisites. You can just start diving in because everything you need to know is going to be on screen. But I did make some helpful printable PDFs and I have posted them over at my Patreon. So if you'd like those, please subscribe. You can find links below in the description. We're going to begin by talking a little bit of music theory, and along that route, we'll be absorbing the different arpeggio patterns we'll need for this lesson. So to start off with, this is all about ADD11 arpeggios. What does that mean? Well, an arpeggio is just the notes of a chord, played one at a time instead of all at once. So this is a C chord. This is a C arpeggio. I know that seems like a weird distinction, but it's just that simple. What does ADD11 mean? Well, in this context, we have a C, ADD11. It means we're going to play a C chord and just add on the 11th. How do you find the 11th? Well, you start on your root note and you literally count up 11 notes of your major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This note, when added to my C chord, that note was an F, I get a C ADD11. Now, here's what's really important. That note that we added in was a high F. But we didn't have to move all the way that high up just to find an F. We could have found F down here, and it would have acted as a fourth instead. Listen, 1, 2, 3, 4 takes me to F. So you really want to commit to memory that the 11th is the same note as the fourth. And also, you don't have to play ADD11 arpeggios as real 11ths. You can play them as fourths instead, and you can still call them ADD11. If you would like to call this arpeggio C ADD4, I'm fine with that. Most musicians will know what you're talking about. But traditionally, the number 4 is reserved for suspended chords, so some music theory professors might grumble at you for calling these ADD4 arpeggios. So you get it? ADD11 means we're literally just adding the fourth to any chord. And obviously, we can do this in C, right? Here's a C triad, and we can add in the fourth or the 11th to get C major ADD11. We can also do this with a C minor triad. Here's C, E flat, G, and I'm just going to add in the 11th, that same 11th, to get C minor ADD11. We can also do this with a diminished triad, C, E flat, G flat, but I'll add in that 11th right there. And I've got C diminished ADD11. Those three shapes are the ones you want to start practicing. You could do this with augmented though. You could do a C augmented triad and also add in the 11th. That's just so rare, we're not even going to see it in today's lesson. And I would suggest you do just what I did. Start on a note. Here's a different note. We'll start on E, and we'll go through the different shapes. E major ADD11. E minor ADD11, E diminished ADD11. Get comfortable with those on your instrument. Then try moving up a half step and doing it over again. F major ADD11, F minor ADD11, F diminished ADD11. And move up a half step and do it again. For guitar players, this is really easy, but on the piano, it's going to be much more difficult. Now, the last theory concept we have to learn here is the sharp 11. You already know what an 11th is, right? It's the same thing as a fourth. Can you guess what a sharp 11 is? It's the same thing as a sharp fourth. So here was my C arpeggio. Here's my 11th, but I can take that 11th and I can sharp it, and I get C add sharp 11. This is actually very popular. You're going to see the major add sharp 11 quite a bit. It's very important, so I want you to practice that one as well, which gives you 4 arpeggios that you're supposed to be practicing for this lesson. Major ADD11, minor ADD11, diminished ADD11, and major add sharp 11. Do keep in mind, though, you could add that sharp 11 to a minor triad. It's just very rare. You could also add it to an augmented triad, but you couldn't add it to a diminished triad because it's already there under the name flat 5. So these are the 4 arpeggio patterns I want you to practice. I'd also like you to practice them in this pattern of 6. We're going to go up the arpeggio and then back down. And you can count this as triplets. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3. Try to get fast at that on all the different shapes, and then you'll be ready for the next part of this lesson. However, really quickly, I want to talk to just the guitarists here because this pattern opens up a really awesome opportunity to develop an insane amount of speed on our instrument. So we're going to talk a little bit guitar theory here. If you don't play the guitar, you might want to skip ahead to this time somewhere on the screen, and that way I'm not boring you with guitar technique. All right, so it's just us guitarists, right? Us cool people. Well, check this out. The way we're going to play this pattern is with this specific picking pattern. I'll start here in C again. I'm going to do a downstroke, and then a downstroke, and then an upstroke, and then a downstroke, and then the rest is legato. I'm just going to do pull-offs. So again, that's down, down, up, down, 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 up, down, pull off, down, down, up, down, 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 up, down. This is one of the faster patterns I personally can play on my guitar because it employs economy picking. Those 2 downs that I did, I'm treating them like 1 down. I'm not thinking down, down, I'm thinking down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And that gets me a lot of speed. I don't know about you, but it's a lot faster for my pick to do this, 2 downs, than it is to do a down and an up, or a up, down. So we're using that controlled fall. Think Buzz Lightyear, right? We're just dropping our pick down with 1 stroke, and then we're whipping back up to complete that pattern. Down, up, down. 1 big down. Oops, I screwed that up. All right, down, down, up, down. Down, down, up, down. Down, down, up, down. Down, down, up, down. It's also worth practicing this pattern in reverse just by starting on this note with the pinky, and you begin with the legato, so it's a downstroke, and then you do your economy picking, down, down, up, down. So it's starting on the pinky or starting on the middle finger. Same idea, same picking pattern, they both blaze. Keep in mind, I also have an older lesson on economy picking, some really good exercise in there, some really good explanations of the technique if you'd like to learn more about that. But here's another important aspect of playing this on the guitar, is when my middle finger comes off of this 2nd string, it's very likely that I accidentally get that 2nd string ringing out, and I don't want to do that. I don't want my 2nd string ringing out. So one of the things I've learned to do is to cheat. I've let my 1st finger just barely rub up against the 2nd string and kind of have a permanent home right there. And that means that if my middle finger happens to come off the 2nd string, it's going to be automatically muted by my 1st finger. So you can see my 1st finger's just anchored there, right? Completely anchored there. And as I do my pattern, it acts as like a safety buffer to keep that 2nd string from ringing out. And that way I don't have to keep this hand active the entire time to mute that string. Now the last note here for you guitarists is that these patterns that we're doing are movable to different strings. So that was a C arpeggio. I started on C on the 2nd string, but I could find C on the low string and get some low riffage instead. We could do it on the 5th string to the 4th string. Same exact shape. We don't have to learn anything new. Here it is again on the 4th string. Oh, sorry. But when we move to the 3rd string and 2nd string, we do have to learn new shapes. And those are part of the PDF that I've made. But basically a C arpeggio would look like this now. And a C minor arpeggio is going to have a little bit more work. And then the C diminished right there. It's time to start assembling these arpeggios into a complete exercise. And the way we're going to do that is with diatonic ADD11 arpeggios. You already know what ADD11 arpeggios are. Diatonic just means we're staying within 1 key. We're never going to leave the notes of a certain scale. For example, here are the notes of the E major scale. And if I start here on E and skip a note, and then don't skip a note and don't skip a note, I naturally create an E major ADD11 chord. So that is a diatonic chord in the key of E. It is a chord that exists within the key of E. If I move over to my next note in the key of E, I've got F sharp. And if I skip a note there, that takes me to the note A. And if I don't skip a note, I'm given the note B, and then next is the note C sharp. That gives me the notes of an F sharp minor ADD11. F sharp minor ADD11 is a diatonic chord in the key of E. It is completely within the scale. Moving forward, I'm going to get a diatonic G sharp minor ADD11. If I move forward again, I get an A major with an added sharp 11. Next, I get a B ADD11, and then a C sharp minor ADD11, and then finally, I get this diminished ADD11. What's really important is this pattern will never change. I don't care what key you're talking about. All of the minor chords will naturally become minor ADD11s, and that 4 chord will naturally become a major add sharp 11. And the 1 and the 5 will naturally become major ADD11. So this pattern is repeatable, and I want you to try to remember what happened to each chord as we added the 11th, because every key it's going to work out the same way. So let's try playing through this slowly. We've got our first tonic chord, E major ADD11. Then we're going to move to the 2 chord and play that minor ADD11, the 3 ADD11, the 4 major add sharp 11, the 5 ADD11, the 6 minor ADD11, the 7 diminished ADD11, and then finally back to my E major ADD11. That is our diatonic ADD11 arpeggio exercise. And obviously the goal here is to try to add some speed in there, moving and transitioning between these arpeggios in a clean and smooth fashion. That's the exercise. Obviously, try this exercise in different keys. We just did it in E. In the key of C, it's actually hard for us guitar players because we have to move over these other shapes as well. So really expose yourself to the different keys and the different ways that this exact exercise is going to work out. Now that you can string together those diatonic ADD11 arpeggios, I would recommend you do them with different patterns. So like do the same arpeggios, but don't do that up and down 6-note pattern. That's great for like skill building. It's great for technique. But it's not always the greatest thing to hear people do the same 6-note pattern. It's predictable. Honestly, I think one of the most annoying things a lead player can do is to blare away repetitively at the same pattern over and over again. Pretty quick, you catch on to the trick. So my advice here is do these same exercises, but leave that technique shred building behind and just kind of meander through the arpeggio. So here's back to the key of E again, and instead of doing this, maybe just think of working melodically with it. So like this, or backwards through them. Right? So you're kind of leaving behind the mechanical, predictable patterns, and you're trying to think of these as just little comfortable places to play some notes. And when you start doing that, it becomes really easy to start using these patterns to make actual music. Here's an example. I've written this very simple chord progression in A major that starts with a 1, and then goes to 4, and then goes to 2, and then goes to 5, and then goes to 3, and then goes to 6, then 2, and then 5, and then back to 1. Typical standard diatonic chord progression. All I've done was make them minor 7th and major 7th to make it a little bit more jazzy, but it's still all in one key. That's all the key of A major. And from here, I'm just gonna plug and play those arpeggios on top. What was my first chord? A major, right? So I'm gonna find A on my fretboard, and I'll play the diatonic arpeggio over this A major chord. What was the next chord in my progression? It was D, right? That's the 4 chord. Well, all I'm gonna do is move over to my 4 chord, and I know that diatonically, it should be an add sharp 11, right? We already memorized that in the last exercise, that the 4 chord becomes sharp 11. Now I'm gonna move over to the 2, and I'm gonna play my minor add 11. I'm gonna move over to my 5, and I'm gonna play a major add 11, and we're just gonna continue this. For each of these chords, here's the 3 chord, the 6, back to the 2, and then back to the 5. So here that is in action, just finding the arpeggio and playing through the arpeggio on top of each chord as it comes up. That's lovely, but it's all diatonic. It's very, very basic. If you want to stretch this stuff even further, you're going to have to learn more about non-diatonic harmony. And honestly, the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to get my book, The Chord Progression Codex. Everything we've explained here and everything I'm about to go into is explained in that book, and then a bunch more. I can't recommend it enough. But the chord progression I wrote at the beginning of this video is non-diatonic. It doesn't fit into a key, and it's got some tricks going on to it. It looks like it's in the key of E, because we start off with a 1 and a 5. But then all of a sudden we get a C major, which I think of as being borrowed from the parallel minor. Then we get an A minor, which I also think of being borrowed from the parallel minor. However, this A minor is a pivot chord. From here on out, we're gonna treat A minor like the 1 chord, like home. And to do that, I'm gonna introduce this Neapolitan 6 cadence. I'm gonna bring in a B flat / D, and then an E, and then that resolves me back to A. And I'm actually gonna resolve to A major, so we get a Picardy 3rd. And just to make things even crazier, I'm gonna add in the sharp 11. So that way that last ending chord has this dreamy kind of weirdness to it. And this is the chord progression that those intro arpeggios were all based around, this exact movement right here. So all we do is just plug and play the right arpeggio on top of each one. For E major, we play an E major add 11. For a B, we add a B add 11. For that C, I know that chord specifically really likes the sharp 11. That's one of those things that you'll just have to kind of explore through your chord knowledge. And then for the A minor, we just do a simple minor add 11. I know that the Neapolitan chord really enjoys the sharp 11 as well, so I do a B flat add sharp 11. And then finally, we've got that E to resolve us back to the A. And once again, we made that A add the sharp 11. Now, if you found this enjoyable and practical, you should do it all over again with ninths. which we also call seconds. So experiment with adding the ninth into your chord and experiment with arpeggiating that and figure out diatonically where do the ninths fit in. And you'll find out, hey, you can't just add ninths willy-nilly all over to any chord in a key. Some of them have to become flat nine. And I think that's really important. It's really important to know just off the top of your head, hey, what kind of notes can this chord support diatonically? Right? Can the 4 chord support an 11th? No, it can't diatonically. It has to support a sharp 11. And that's kind of where the whole idea of Lydian chords come from, is that sharp 11 off the 4th. So these kind of exercises hopefully drill into you and make it easier to memorize what kind of extension these chords can support. But I'd also recommend checking out my 2-part series on suspended chords. In those videos, we're dealing a lot with the 4th, and we're dealing with it in a different context that we did here. Because in that case, the 4th is replacing the 3rd totally. It's not just being added in. But I think that about does it here for this lesson. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you found it educational and entertaining. If you did enjoy this lesson, you will have to thank my Patreon supporters for making these lessons possible. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to make lessons like this for free with no sponsorships or ads in the middle of them. So they have my appreciation, and I hope they have yours as well. But if you'd like to support this channel in other ways than donating to my Patreon, please check out my website. I've got some really good resources there for guitarists, a rhythm training course, a theory and songwriting course, and then, of course, my new chord progression codex, which, as I already said, I think is the greatest way you could possibly try learning modern harmony. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.